during an interview in which she tried to blame Democrats for the lack of resolution at the southern border. Fox propagandist Maria Bartiromo was stunned into speechlessness when the Republican congressman she was talking to actually rejected her false premises and correctly blamed Republicans for the lack of resolution at the southern border. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have several clips to look at in this video, starting with this one here from Maria Bartiromo on the Fox Propaganda Network, and she's interviewing Republican Congressman Keith Self of Texas. Now, Maria Bartiromo is interesting because she's not stupid, and for a MAGA cultist, she actually will ask Republicans tough questions from time to time, particularly over the southern border and the failed sham Biden impeachment inquiry. We've seen her grill James Comer and Nancy Mace and Jim Jordan because she wants them to succeed, and she's kind of like bought into the talking points. And when they fail to deliver, she gets frustrated because they've hyped her up and then left her wanting. And she kind of does it here too when she's talking about the southern border. But then she also does something interesting in which she tries to make it a softball for Keith Self and put at least 50% of the blame on the Democrats in the House of Representatives. But Republican Congressman Keith Self here surprisingly throws her curveball and fact checks her and puts the blame where it actually belongs.
Yeah. So what's wrong with Congress then, Congressman? I mean, why can't you actually move the needle on securing the border? I understand you need a willing partner on the other side, and you haven't had that. But it's frustrating to see all of these illegals coming in and the drugs flowing in, and really no movement.
The problem is the Republicans, not the Democrats. We know how the Democrats are going to vote. It's too many of my Republican colleagues are unwilling to vote to secure the border.
So did you see how she visibly reacted to that? She kind of almost like struck. She reared back. She nodded a little bit. Her eyes went into her hairline. She was stunned by the fact that Keith Self would tell the truth. And he did tell the truth. It's the Republicans' fault that there's no resolution at the southern border, or at least a good faith attempt at it. Because as a reminder, late last year, after several months of negotiating, there was a relatively conservative bipartisan border bill that was being negotiated on in the Senate between Republican Senator James Lankford, one of the most conservative senators in the United States Senate, who was endorsed by Trump in part because he was so hawkish on the southern border, Democratic Senator Chris Murphy, and Independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema. They worked in good faith for months, and it gave Republicans quite a bit of what they were certainly more conservative than progressive. Okay. And then Trump cynically killed it. That's 100% because of Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Democrats are blameless in this respect. Both sides recognized that there was a situation at the southern border that they deemed to be a crisis. Some of both sides worked together in good faith to try to resolve the crisis. And then one side, and one side only, the Republicans, cynically killed it for pure political reasons. That means you own the whole thing. And if you don't believe me, I just want to refer you to the words of Republican Senator Mitch McConnell and Republican Senator Lindsey Graham.
We all felt that the border was a complete disaster, myself included. And Chad, you remember covering the phases we went through. First, there was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all. That took months.
Again, their nominee for president, Donald Trump, didn't want to do anything because he wanted to use it as a wedge issue during a contentious political campaign. That's 100% Donald Trump's moral culpability and the Republicans who went along with him. Lindsey Graham also effectively says the same thing.
Everybody who comes on this floor and says our border's broken, we should do something about it, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, we didn't get there. President Trump opposed a Senate bill. We couldn't find a better way forward that would get 60 votes.
Donald Trump opposed the bill that Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell supported, by the way, but because their party's leader came a-calling and demanded, again, a pure cynical political maneuver, they fell in line. So, and we actually have polling. We talked about this. Chris Murphy's pointed this out, that even though Republicans enjoy a default advantage on immigration with polling, when swing state voters in particular are educated on what Donald Trump and the Republicans did to kill this bipartisan border bill, that 15 percentage gap evaporates. So as I've said before, and I've said it again many times, President Biden and the Democrats have a very compelling fact-based story to tell, which if they tell it correctly, will mitigate, will completely neutralize the Republicans' advantage with respect to immigration and disarm them. And wouldn't that be hilarious that if Donald Trump killed this bipartisan border bill, and only for Democrats and President Biden to get on the ball in terms of messaging and then completely mitigate it. So not only have Republicans failed to actually do anything legislatively, but the reason that they tanked the bill in the first place, it didn't even pay off there either. That should be the goal. Eric Swalwell, a Democratic congressman, also talks about this a bit more earlier today during a congressional, I think it was a judiciary a judiciary committee hearing, I believe, in which he puts a cap on this.
Now this hearing today is about the border. We want to help fix the border. In fact, the second most conservative member of the Senate, according to the American Conservative Union, is James Lankford of Oklahoma, the second most conservative member of the Senate. He has the crazy idea that we should surge resources to the border, put more judges there to adjudicate claims of asylum, give the president the authority to shut down the border if it's being overwhelmed. And the president, in good faith, engages. Many Democrats, including myself, in good faith, engage. And then Donald Trump realizes, wait, if we solve the border crisis, I can't politicize the border crisis. And so he tells them, don't pass that bipartisan legislation. Senator Lisa Murkowski, a Republican, said, I'm not giving up. This is not about Trump, and it's not about me. It's about our country. Senator Todd Young from Indiana said, I hope no one is trying to take this away for campaign purposes. Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, said, how does Trump know it's a betrayal if he hasn't read it? I mean, don't be ignorant, read the bill. And James Lankford, the author of the bill, said, it's interesting. Republicans 4 months ago would not give funding for Ukraine, for Israel, and for our southern border because we demanded changes in policy. And now it's interesting. A few months later, when we're finally getting to the end, they're like, oh, just kidding. I actually don't want a change in law because it's a presidential election year. One side wants the fix, one side wants the fiction. That's entirely what this is about. So we'll engage you in this exercise, and you can send your letters about what you'd like to see on the border, but we actually stand ready to get things done. What you're seeing today is not oversight. It's overkill.
Yeah, so listen, again, we have an opportunity here to neutralize one of the many political advantages that Republicans enjoy with respect to polling, and that's the issue at the southern border. Because again, that's what they do. This is what the Republican Party does. They are incapable. They are uninterested in responsibly governing. They have no talent for it. Democrats are just objectively superior, and the record reflects it. But what Republicans are good at doing, is making a mess or exacerbating a mess, identifying the mess, pointing at the mess, campaigning on the mess, complaining about the mess as well, campaigning and complaining, and then doing nothing to fix it. Just blame it on Democrats and then be rewarded electorally for it. It's, again, as I've said before, if you compare it to a video game, Republicans play the game of politics on easy mode with all the cheats enabled. They don't have to do any of the hard stuff. But we have an opportunity here to undermine that one advantage or one of their many advantages and make them pay for it at the ballot box in November. And I love the fact that even on the Fox Propaganda Network, when they try to throw them a softball and blame Democrats, at least in part, for what's going on, even other Republicans are like, no, it's really on us. Democrats are not responsible for it. It's on Republicans. I love that. And I love seeing the look of shock and awe on the Fox host's face, because they're not used to a Republican trafficking in truth. And Fox doesn't want to traffic in truth either. They just want to blame Democrats. And so you have Keith Self completely imploding the whole thing. And watching Maria Bartiromo's face was just priceless. Let me know what you think in the comments.